Today's guest is Jessica Price. She is the Director of Customer Success at NuAxis Innovations. And Jessica is on the Emerging Leaders Board at AFCEA Bethesda. Amazing organization, an amazing board that's doing some great work there. And then she was also in the ACT-IAC Voyagers class of 2020, the fated COVID class at ACT-IAC for Voyagers. And then it's through ACT-IAC and a lot of volunteering. Jessica and I both volunteer at a lot of places that we've kind of interacted and see each other at networking events here in the DC area. And I've gotten to know you over that time. So Jessica, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So for those who haven't had a chance to go to a networking event, maybe have a drink and ask questions, talk a bit about yourself, where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm actually a Virginia local. So I grew up in Springfield, Virginia, went to what was Robert E. Lee High School, and then I stayed in Virginia for college and went to the University of Virginia and did the quintessential run back home after college because I did not have a job lined up and lived with my parents for a little while I figured out what I wanted to do.
And I'm assuming they made you do jobs in the meantime?
They did. So I worked both my parents worked for Fairfax County Public Schools. So every summer I worked for Fairfax County as a summer school intern. So basically what I would do was I was kind of the registrar and help desk for Fairfax County. So I would either sign up students or even adults for their adult learning classes for classes. And then as the budget's cut, I got more and more jobs every summer. So sometimes it was signing them up and then also being like the back office help desk for the summer school system because they had a different system than the normal school system that they use during the school year. So the teachers would call for questions on like how to put in grades and things like that. And then they really liked me, so they just kept finding tasks for me to do until I found a quote unquote real job that would keep me employed for a while now, actually, since I'm still there.
So as you were coming out of college, then you said you had to do the go back to the parents' place. So I'm assuming that meant there was not there's no job fairs, or there was just some challenges coming out of UVA?
Yeah. So when I graduated, we were still in a little bit of the recession. I remember I have an older brother, he's a year older, and he also, in our classes, kind of had a hard time. Yes, there were job fairs. I went to them, and I gave it the good college try for a little while. And then about second semester, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy my second semester, final semester of college, and I will figure it out later, which, I'm very lucky and fortunate to, be able to have that option and have my parents as a landing spot. I had other friends, who were trying to move to a different place or even trying to move to DC and, really needed a job in order to make that happen. And so they were, much more, focused on finding a job before they left college. I was lucky in not needing to do that. I went and studied abroad a little bit, or not studied, but I did I took probably like a month and I volunteered for 2 weeks, and then I traveled for 2 weeks because I didn't actually study abroad in college. That was like one of my coming out of college, one regret. I could never figure out what semester to give up at UVA to go study abroad. So I just decided I would travel instead.
That's awesome. So then how did you stumble into the job, into NuAxis?
So one of my very dear friends, Lindsay Tepp, who I think you've met, she and I went to college together, and she was one of those people that she wanted to move to DC and needed to find a job. And so she started with NuAxis right out of school. And then probably about 6 months later, Imran Akram, our CEO at the time, asked her if she had any friends because she was working directly under Raza, our now CEO. And he was like, do you have a you, but for me? And she was like, actually, I think I might. And so I interviewed. It was a much, for anyone who knows Raza and Imran, they're kind of tough interviewers. You see them out on the networking circuit and they're, very friendly and nice. And they were all of that, but they asked, the tough questions that, I wasn't necessarily, not that I wasn't expecting, but also I knew nothing about government contracting at the time. So I was like, I hope I sound intelligent and I hope I'm answering their questions. Imran really loves the what are you going to do with your life or what are you looking for in your career? Like the big open-ended questions. I still remember that. And I still remember, and he would constantly ask me those during my reviews in the beginning years. I still am not sure I have a great answer, but always good to be asked and always good to have to think about it.
Oh, so I see you've had multiple roles. How did that come about? Did you have opportunities? They came to you or you sought them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I started at NuAxis, we were a very small company. We probably had one major contract with the federal government and had just won an IDIQ that was under protest. And then we had a couple small subcontracts and things like that. So I was really brought on to kind of help Imran organize. We they had just stood up BD as a full-time job with Raza coming off a contract and Lindsay being there for proposals. And then I was kind of the catch-all. They didn't have a contracts manager at that time. Everybody else, I think everyone else was mostly part-time. We had part-time recruiter. We had full-time HR. So I was kind of the person that they wanted to plug all of the gaps that Imran was too busy to fill. So I started with kind of actually managing the burn rate on contracts, and figuring that out. And contracts, they wanted me to start reviewing. They sent me to I think it was a management concepts class. I think they're still around, on like GovCon 101 and contracting. And so I had to read all of our contracts, review them, and then also manage the burn rate for all of our contracts, because nobody was really, we had part-time finance, so nobody was really managing it that closely. And that kind of morphed into basically being, if there was a job, it was mine. So I started invoicing for the contracts, since I was already managing the hours. And since I was invoicing for the contracts, they were like, well, you should probably start paying attention to how we price the contracts. So that was actually my first introduction to business development, was through pricing, which I think is not necessarily everyone's normal way of getting introduced to business development. And as time went on, I just kept taking more and more tasks. And it's not that Imran gave me full contract negotiation authority on day one. He was definitely still very involved in that. But as my skills grew, his trust in me grew, and I kind of took that on more and more. And at a certain point, it became that there were too many jobs for just me to manage. We invested in CMMI and ISO certification, so that was also under my purview as a job. I implemented all of those systems for us, and so with that, contracts, I even recruited a little bit. Came a time where I was like, I can't do all 5 jobs, and we hired some more people. And then they asked me, well, what is it that you actually want to do? They gave me an option of, if I wanted to stay in more of the operations contract management, they would invest in, actually, more than just, contracting 101. Because we were reaching a point, especially with, NDAs and TAs and things like that, where, I was using my nice bachelor's degree, in logic to say what I thought was, a good agreement, but I don't have any formal training and not a lawyer. We had a lawyer that we could consult, but obviously lawyers are very expensive. You don't want to consult them on every single agreement. So I decided that wasn't the track I wanted to take. And I was more interested in business development. So we hired a full-time contracts manager with actual experience. But it's
Still, that's amazing that they over time you build trust enough
yep.
to kind of craft the role, if you will, that you wanted to take. And that's unique to small business. How about I say that? Unique to a
Yeah.
small, if you get in when the business is small, everybody does a little bit of everything. I've worked for a few companies that were 15 or less. Absolutely love that experience, but everybody does a little bit of everything. And then you're right, as it grows, there becomes opportunity.
And I think one of the benefits of that too is now that I'm basically, full-time business development as much as you can be, and it's still, we're now a mid-sized, full and open business, but that knowledge has been very valuable. I think the things, especially from the contracts and having to negotiate TAs and stuff like that, not being on the BD side, like I know exactly what my team is going to ask, what they're going to want to see, and you can have those conversations ahead of time with other companies. And then also things like putting together CTAs. I think those are becoming much more common these days. I've known about them for a very long time, and different things that are more on the business side of business development, that not necessarily, I don't think everyone gets exposed to if they come up straight just, as like a BD analyst. Um, you know, so
Yeah.
I've found that with talking to other people, them being able to share that knowledge that I've learned that they just haven't been exposed to.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then where did the title customer success come from?
So that came from knowing our company, Raza has been a customer experience evangelist for years. And we, at a certain point, we decided our titles weren't really aligned with the company vision and mission. And also, I mean, anyone can see it on my LinkedIn. My previous title was capture manager and capture director. And it's just also, it's not very friendly sounding. Like, who wants to take a call from someone, with capture in their title? The
Right.
amount of times at these networking events, I've been asked what I'm trying to capture is kind of funny. I'm like, well, you guys know, for anyone who's taken a Shipley class, like capture is one of the phases in the business development life cycle. So I'm like, everyone knows why it's a title, or a lot of people know. I'm sure there are people who don't know. But you just want to poke fun that they make the capture the flag jokes and all that good stuff.
No, I agree with you. Customer success rolls off the tongue much better. And I think it's probably even better description of what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that is my role, is obviously it's business development. So it's to, partially find and win new work, but we're not going to keep winning new work if we're not successful at the work that we have. And that's truly my role, is once we've engaged, just to make sure that the client is successful, whether that is, them needing me to connect them with other people within the organization that aren't supporting them, or helping our delivery team in any sort of way.
Or encouraging them that you could also do that other thing that they're not doing well. Hey, we could do that for you too.
Exactly.
So as you've kind of gone through this interesting maturation that brought you to where you are today, looking back, are there some things you might say, oh man, now that I've learned this, I want to share it with somebody that
Yeah,
have helped you in terms of how you've been able to grow your career, as it was happening, right? We all kind of fall into it.
exactly.
Sure, we're doing some things that are causing that to happen, right? We put ourselves in the right position at the right time, and the right amount of work ethic, and the right effort and caring. But also there's a bit of, maybe skills that we should have had that could have changed it faster, or so I'm just curious what you might recommend to someone who's considering doing similar work.
Yeah. I mean, I think always ask, where. So the nice thing with, I've only worked at NuAxis, but the nice thing about that is I've always been able to have an open conversation about like where where growth opportunities are at NuAxis. And NuAxis thankfully has grown, so there's been room for that for me. And so I've always been able to ask for training, and I think taking advantage of it. Even the things that, for example, like I took PMP training. PMP is always, I think, as a job, it's great for people to have. I didn't go through with getting the actual PMP, maybe one day, but taking the class was fantastic, and I learned a lot. And I took all of the ISO and CMMI trainings and things like that. So the training was always available and open to me, and I think that shows the company's investment in you. And if for some reason that's not happening, maybe that would be a sign that it's maybe time to look somewhere else. I think charting your own path is also very important. There's no one true right answer. Like I've definitely had people tell me like, oh, staying at NuAxis is a mistake in terms of like not getting a diversified career experience. To them, I would say like our company isn't the same company as when I started, and I'm getting diversity through our different growth inflection points. But if I had moved on, it probably also would have been an okay choice. Like, life's a journey at the end of the day. We're all going to figure out where we're not going to know where we're going to end up until we get there. And so just enjoy the ride. But I think one of the other things that I've really found important and enjoyed is the different groups that are out there, like ACT-IAC, which is I think how you and I met, and AFCEA. If you're not, especially for people who are in like smaller companies, it's a great way to hear how it is at other organizations, have a good network, and be able to learn from other people, without necessarily having to like change your job or do anything like that. And it's also just, a way to I've made some really good friends through those organizations.
That's a great recommendation. I love the networking opportunities here in the DC area through AFCEA, ACT-IAC, and others that are out there. And volunteering at those organizations is an opportunity for you to stretch yourself in another way, right? I mean, sure, you stretch yourself in your job. You're trying to do everything you can for the company to be successful, but then the volunteering at, say, ACT-IAC and a community of interest or AFCEA as a board member, which is amazing, right? There are there's a lot of nuances to that will cause you to learn new skills.
Exactly.
So what's next for you? What's coming up here in the next year?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't plug the AFCEA Bethesda Emerging Leaders Winter IT Lunch. So that's my board position. I'm a chair for that. So I'm planning that event, which is definitely, as you said, a way to stretch myself. Never planned a luncheon before, but I'm sure it'll be great. The AFCEA Bethesda Emerging Leader events always are. And then I think with this year for NuAxis, we're really just, focusing on kind of doubling down on customer experience and seeing where that journey takes us. I think we've got some great traction from last year, and looking forward to hopefully continuing that, and really focusing in on our strategy and delivering on it.
All right. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've been bugging about you for a long time on it, and it's just been a joy to chat with you and hear more about your story.
Thank you so much for having me.